It is another episode of Designing for Music. I'm Zach Martin in New York City, along with Patrick Bamburak somewhere in New Jersey. We got Spencer Drate. He's New York City itself. Judith Salavetz, I think she's in Connecticut. And Bruce Licher, who is in Bishop, California, which is right near the Sierras and the Mojave Desert. Did I get that right?
You got that right. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Bruce is an amazing artist, and it seems like every episode we have more and more to add, and many interesting pieces of art to view. On this particular episode, Bruce, Judith, Spencer, Patrick, and myself, we're going to do what's called show and tell. Now, Spencer has mentioned you, Bruce, in his 545s book, which I always keep on hand, and it's a great book. We have various pieces of, I'm going to just say pieces of art that you sent us. But before we do that, before we talk about your book and get into it, why don't you tell us about your location, where you are, what you're working on, and some of the artwork that's in the background that people can see in this video.
Okay. Well, I'm located in Bishop, California, which is a small town at the north end of the Owens Valley in the Eastern Sierras. It's basically where Los Angeles gets a lot of its water from, and it's also one of the deepest valleys in the United States, with the highest mountain peaks on the west and more high mountain peaks on the east. We're about halfway between Yosemite and Death Valley, so we have both the mountains and the deserts easily accessible. And I've been here for about 12 years now. We have a space in downtown Bishop where we have our letterpress print shop and a small art gallery space. And so what you see behind me are a couple of the recent album jackets that I've designed and printed on our letterpress equipment. The one immediately behind me is a special edition we did for a Los Angeles band called Silver Sun Pickups. For their latest album. We've done two different editions of this, both that have different color schemes on them. The one behind me is the one that they used for their tour edition, which they had started just before the COVID shutdown happened. So, but I did get a chance to go see them perform and see that record at their merch booth. So that was kind of fun. The other is a band called Hunting Lodge from the 1980s. That was a reissue of some of their recordings from the late 1980s that I was hired to design and print on our letterpress.
Well, and your wife is also involved in art as well. You want to tell us a little bit about her and give the website so people can go and view?
Yes. So the red painting that's also behind my head is one of her abstract, minimal abstract paintings. Most of her work she does with different colors of earth that she collects from the Southwest and mixes them in with her paints, and creates layers of different colors of earth and abstract elements. She has a website, which is www.karennielsenlicher.com. That's KarenNielsenLicher.com. So you can see a lot more of her work there. We also have websites for Independent Project Press at independentprojectpress.com, and our Project Room gallery space is www.projectroom.net. And there are several pages there that would have more of my work on it, as well as some of the other artists and photographers whose work we show from the Eastern Sierras here.
How did the COVID affect your business and what you do?
Well, it's interesting because the first couple of weeks after California shut down, it was a little iffy. We didn't really know whether our clients would, whether we'd have a business or not. And then before long, some of our regular printing clients had more work for us to do. And we ended up actually being very busy throughout the spring. And in the meantime, I've also been in the process of working on setting up a new distribution deal with financing from my record label, Independent Project Records. And we are getting close to relaunching the label. And I'm shifting my focus back to doing more in-house work for my own record label rather than doing mostly outside work, commissioned work from other people. And so I'm excited about that. We have a lot of really interesting projects coming up, and there'll be a lot more record and CD packaging being cranked out on our printing presses here.
Well, I'm sure that we'll be having future episodes where we have some of our artists along with you explaining their music and going over the designs. Now let's get to the show and tell part. I know everybody's really itching to do that. Let me just say that I appreciate what you sent me so much. I mean, I'm going to keep this stuff forever and probably hide it so that after I'm gone, nobody can put it up on eBay, because it just shouldn't happen. I like the stock of paper that you use. I like the intricacies. I like some of the concepts. It's like when I look at all of your stuff, I'm thinking to myself, man, this is like the high end American Greetings type of printing ensemble. Am I right? Like, it's not just a cheap card that you get, or not just something that has no thought to it. So I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate everything in the design and the look and the feel and the quality that went into.
You know why you like it? You know why you like that? Because it's very organic, and we human beings are drawn to anything that's organic. And Bruce, I mean, I don't know if you use recycled boards, recycled papers, but you know, the colors, you know, the craft paper, you know, that brownish tones to it, you know, the texture when you touch it, it just feels organic, and so it's just almost like a connection. Anybody that looks at it and touches it has, you know, even without wanting that connection, they immediately have a connection.
Well, also there's also a surprise in every package. Like you get something you don't expect. So nothing is there's some similarities, but nothing's the same.
Yeah. Well, and so Judith, to talk about what you were just saying, the organicness of it and recycled, the brown chipboard, which is what I've become very well known for and that I use quite a bit, is largely recycled. Not necessarily post-consumer recycled. I had it described to me once by a paper supplier as floor sweepings. So basically it was just like whatever was left over from the paper milling process. It's just the cheap stuff. They throw it in and turn it into a board stock that was mostly used for packing material. Like when I first came across chipboard when I was in college, I had a job in a computer room, and it was the old-fashioned computers with the boxes of paper with, you know, the holes in the side. And you'd cut open the box, and there was a piece of chipboard on top of the paper, so that when you cut the box, you'd cut into the chipboard instead of cutting the paper that you needed to use. So I just thought, wow, this chipboard is pretty cool stuff. So why don't I'll just keep it and I'll do something with it. And lo and behold, I ran across a class in letterpress printing and made a postcard for our upcoming first album from Savage Republic. And then I decided to make the album cover on that chipboard stock. So I purchased, you know, bundles of chipboard. It comes in 50-pound bundles, and I had to cut it down and put it on the press and printed album jackets.
Oh, that's amazing. Beautiful.
You know, I want to bring in something on packaging, because I always got attracted. You get a board sample, and one side was like kind of shiny, and then all of a sudden you flip it over, and you know what I mean, Bruce? It's a matte. You know, it'd be like what you work on. Yeah. And I always said that's a side I want to print on. You know. Yeah. And you do that, and I've got to say that. When I was a Grammy judge in the 80s, when you were, I think, just starting, we would have all these different entries on the table, and your entry would be on the table, and I go, who the hell is this? I mean, it would like stand out, like so different. And I'm so glad where you are, and you've given us this great, as I say, you're a combination of something very visionary and very unusual. You're not only a great letterpress person and printer, but you're also a great graphic designer, which is very hard to put those two things together in the world. It's either one thing or the other. It's usually a printer, and they're not a designer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I just want to bring that point up to you.
Well, it's interesting because I think that what you're seeing is the fact that I when I was at UCLA in the late 70s, I was first in the design department, and I never really got into graphic design at UCLA, but at one point I just decided that what design was being creative for other people, and I wanted to be creative for myself. And so I switched my major from design to fine art. And that was when things really started opening up for me. And so ultimately, when I started my record label, it was that I wanted to make records as fine art. And that I'm always looking for a way to make it more creative and more artistic and more unique. And so my record label became my art instead of being a painter or whatever. My record label was my art. And
you succeeded. Everything you do is unique. It's creative and it's art. Like some of these samples that you sent us, they're so beautiful. They're beautiful enough to. I'm thinking, should I frame these? I would like to frame them up on my wall. They're just
and
so
people do that.
Yeah, I want to bring in something here. It's very important. Judith, my sister or whatever, great designer. She is a painter. I don't know if everybody knows that. She's a great painter.
Yep.
And Bruce, what you're talking about, she has brought into my life that fine art area.
Yeah.
I'm more of a graphic designer, but she is, besides being a great designer, she's also a fine artist. I'm glad you brought that up because your wife is a painter, and you look at fine art, and that's in our design. Judith has brought that side of it into my life or our life as a designer. It's very important.
Yeah.
I know, and to add to that, it's what you're saying, how you discovered this type of paper that you use, the board. Just as an analogy to that, what I do, because I love to paint as well as design, sometimes when I get packages in the mail or big boxes with really heavy-duty cardboard, the board is so beautiful. When I cut open the box, I want to keep that. And I tell myself, I'm going to do something. I'm going to paint on this because it's just such a
nice,
of cardboard or so I can relate to what you just described.
Well, let's get over to the show and tell portion of this, and then after Bruce presents a couple of his pieces of art, let's try to figure out his favorite color. I think I know what it might be.
Whoa.
Okay, so
Bruce, I want to show something.
all right.
What Judith is talking about. If you can. Now, I got this in the mail, a package, CD. I got 45 or something was sent in the mail, and it was from a package. But look at it. It's got stamps on it. It's got the board. But it's like so beautiful. It's what Judith's talking about. It's what you get in the mail sometimes. And it's like artwork. This is like a piece of painting that's on my shelf.
Yeah. Well, that's what I used to do too when I would send out packages. Is I would get old U.S. postage stamps, and there was a stamp dealer in Santa Monica where I used to live in Los Angeles, and he would sell old U.S. postage stamps at face value, and so I would go buy them, and whenever I'd send something out, I would just cover the whole package with postage. Don't really have time to do that anymore, but it was.
But Bruce, along that point, I want you to show us your stamps, which you sent me some samples a long time ago.
We do. As a matter of fact, there's this sheet of stamps that we printed for. I designed and printed for the Savage Impressions book.
Wow.
So this was a sheet that went into the deluxe edition of the book. And they're pinhole perforated. That's my favorite piece of equipment in the print shop is our Rossback pinhole perforator, which was, according to the little sticker on it, it was patented in 1888. And It just has one row of pins on it and a big spring that's attached to a foot pedal. You stick the piece of paper into it and you stomp the foot pedal and it goes ka-chunk and makes one row of perforations on it. So it's a fun project, piece of equipment.
Yeah.
And then there are other stamps that I've done, like for instance, when I did the Camper Van Beethoven album for Virgin Records, the first one, Our Beloved Revolutionary Sweetheart, we made these little promotional stamp booklets for Camper Van Beethoven. And so this was something that Virgin Records would send out to, as a promotional item. And all of it was hand printed on our hand-fed letterpress. So it was a fun project.
Your design, you have a combination. You use computer and traditional, and also just traditional. Is that right? On certain things?
That's true. Yes. It just depends on the project. Like for instance, the hunting lodge project behind me there, that's entirely handset type, wood type, and letterpress ornaments, along with a couple of small printing plates. Like there's somewhere I've got the actual cover. Here it is. And so you can see it up close. There was a printing plate that was made of a band photo, and then the hunting lodge is the handset type, and then the backside is all more handset type. And then this is one of our die cut album packages that just folds open. The record goes inside along with any other inserts. It's all die cut out of one sheet, doesn't require any gluing, and folds together like so.
Yeah, I've got a number of samples you sent me in 45 that were like that with this.
Yeah.
The great. I like that packaging a lot, by the way. I think it's really remarkable.
Yeah, that original package, the sort of the idea for that one came from a friend of mine named Brock Wirtz. He was the drummer in my 90s band Scenic, and he had a small record label in the early 90s, and he designed a package pretty much like that one for 7-inch records, and then he and I collaborated on a couple of releases for our band Scenic, and then I kind of adapted it a little bit, made it for both 10-inch records and 12-inch records. As a matter of fact, this is a package I did for Rhino Records a few years ago. It was actually a CD package. I did 4 different color combinations of it. The original artwork on the cover was done by a Canadian artist. I'll have to look inside and see what his name is because I've spaced it at the moment. Bob Massey. He was a 1960s psychedelic poster artist. So
I remember that name. Bob
Rhino
Massey,
hired him to do this original artwork for the front cover, which was black and white, and then I did the colorization and turned it into printing plates that we could print on the letterpress. And again, this is kind of the same thing. This one is a combination of computer design and letterpress. And that's, there's a lot of projects these days are being done where we design on the computer, and like for instance, this one here, the Silver Sun pickups, that was all done on computer, and then we sent out for photo engraved printing plates that we then put on our hand-fed letterpress, and that one is 4 runs through the press.
Yeah, I liked Zach and I really like. You mentioned that, and I brought it onto the CD packaging interview 9. The Scenic, the small package, the Scenics. There's actually a series on Scenic. I have another one, a beautiful series with a very simple typography with like a beautiful artwork integrated. I love that series in 45, the small set.
Yeah, well, there's
CD.
I do have the Scenic on me. I also have that album cover that you just talked about.
Yeah, the Tom Northcott.
Okay. Yeah. But inside of it, you had the photo.
Yep.
Right. And then it looks like a newspaper.
Yep.
Yeah, this is really cool. So these are the
Yeah.
extras.
So
that always,
the concept for that was the liner notes. They wanted it to look like an old underground newspaper from the time. And so I designed it just in 2 colors. And we actually had that printed at the newspaper, by the newspaper in the desert town of Ridgecrest, California, which is maybe 2.5 hours south of Bishop, right by there's a large military base there. So Ridgecrest is kind of like the town that services the military base. And they still had an old web press that they printed their newspaper on, and I hired them to print, I can't remember how many thousand of those I think it was maybe 2,000. But they printed it, and I went down there for the press run and took some videotape of it, and it was fun.
But then even more so in the packaging itself, you have a slot where you would put the CD, and then you get the sticker that looks like a miniature label of what would be on the record.
Yeah.
So
I
really love that.
Yeah, the sticker actually was used to seal the package. They
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So you would have to like tear your way into it, which that was something that I've done on a couple of packages where literally you have to either cut or tear the package to get the record out. There's actually this one here, the Deception Bay record that I printed. This was an interesting one. This is a 10-inch record, and this is printed on a sheet of artist carbon paper. So it was an 18 by 24 inch sheet of carbon paper that we literally fed through the press and printed on, and then wrapped it around the record. But the original package was sealed with a sticker. So you either had to tear it open or, carefully slice the edge to get the record out. Some people didn't appreciate that.
What was the record? See, I have your collection here, and I hope I'm not derailing anything, but I really like this, and I was looking at it, right? I was enjoying it.
Yeah.
And then I got called downstairs, and I'm like, where the hell did I take that out of?
Okay, so that was another insert for the Tom Northcott package. Yeah, it was a reproduction of an original gig poster that I believe that was another Bob Massey design.
So you mean to tell me that was all from the same packaging?
Yes.
Wow, that's really cool. I mean, talk about.
Yeah. By the way, Bob Massey has a certain style. Actually, Judith and I did 2 books, rock poster art, and Bob Massey's in one of them. Bob Massey's in one of our books, and he has a certain style. If you see his style, you could know it's a Bob Massey piece. Beautiful, beautiful artist.
Yeah, it was really nice to work with him on that project. That was a project that was commissioned by Rhino Records, and the art director who was working with them at the time was the one who kind of conceptualized a lot of that in terms of what they wanted to be in the package. It was one of Rhino's handmade. It was the Rhino handmade series.
Yeah.
I think they only sold them online, but it was a nice project. I enjoyed doing that.
It looks really good.
I'm not sure if this is on the list, but since we're doing show and tell, I got to show you. I love show and tell.
Oh yeah,
kindergarten and first grade. I like this one, and what I really like. Oh, and you got to show this. This is something that would have gotten me in trouble in kindergarten during show and tell. Like, what's with the big matchbooks? I mean, what are you guys going to do?
Yeah,
start a fire. But matchbooks are known for a lot of different things. They're known to have a purpose, to light your cigarette, your cigar, or whatever you might be smoking. It has some marketing functionality in that it will tell you the lounge that you're at, or market some sort of product or the brand that you're going to smoke itself. And then on the inside of it, you would be able to write notes and write numbers, and so if you had a business meeting, there would be that, and of course the extra lights for you and your friends, and then the marketing over here. This is a real I think, a gem of a design. Take us through the process and how you came up with this. Were you at a bar and
So
maybe?
actually, that project, I have to be honest, I did not design that, but we did the printing on it, and I did some of the typesetting. I was involved in helping to put the package together and make it happen. That was a recent release about a year ago from the Numero Group, which is a label in Chicago who specialize in a lot of really reissuing a lot of special music, unique music. So this is a compilation of songs from privately pressed lounge band records, whether they're 45s or albums. And actually, if you get a copy with the record in it and listen to it, it's really good. It's not like bad lounge music. It's really good lounge band music.
Yeah. I gotta bring in something. And Zach, I gotta call you on this. That is not a Bruce Licher design, because
he just said that.
It's not exactly a great design, but Bruce had to print it. I got to put this in here, but it's a great idea and concept. But the typography and design is not as good as what Bruce does. It's not at all close to it. But I had to bring that in there. But
this is the passive aggressive thing about my sales plan the other day. That's what this is. I've been taking more guff.
The thing is that conceptually, it's perfect because they wanted it to look like something that looked badly designed, and so so a lot of that typesetting, I typeset with my handset type because they wanted that old funky feeling that the handset type can give you.
Yeah, so, the old lounge.
Exactly.
So what I would do is I would handset the type that they needed, and then I put it on the press and ran a black and white proof of it, did a high resolution scan and sent it to the designer who was working on the layout. He sent me back the layouts, and then we had printing plates made and put it on the press and printed it. And then we had to hire a silkscreen printer to come in and silkscreen that faux strike strip on the back. We were trying to see if we could get it to actually work, but it doesn't.
Hey, listen, Bruce, I want to call you. Why don't you show us some of your work now that you have there? I know you have a pile of work you want to show us.
I do have a pile, yes.
We'll move on. Okay. Sorry.
Well, we'll start with the first album cover that I ever printed on the letterpress, and this was the first edition of the album Tragic Figures by my group Savage Republic. And my goal was to basically create a record that was a mystery, and that if you were flipping through the bins, you would find it and you would pull it out and go, what the heck is this and where did it come from? And so, but obviously we had to put the band name on it. So I made stickers that would go on the shrink wrap.
Wow.
That's a good idea.
On the outer bag. So, and this is one of the original ones that had, originally the first year of the band, we were called Africa Core. And then when we released the album, we decided to change the name of the band like a month before we released it. So that's why we have, some of the first ones have that sticker, formerly Africa Core, on it.
That's cool.
And there's a lot of inserts that came inside it. The idea was that we wanted it to have all sorts of fun stuff. So, like hand painted photos of the band.
Wow.
There's the original first pressing has this hand typeset insert with all of our information on it, which if you look closely, it says Africa Core under there. I had printed these before we changed the name, and so I literally had to overprint them because I didn't want to have to set the type again. And then we put Savage Republic down at the bottom. And then we made these reply cards. So this was how we built our mailing list. Everyone is numbered. We wanted to kind of keep track of it. So we made them all a numbered edition. And, it makes it a bit more collectible that way. But at the same time, what I realized later is that it's a great way of doing inventory control when you're trying to figure out, okay, how many records have we sold? As long as you're selling them in numerical order, then all is good.
Yeah. What kind of band really wants to do it that way, though? Come on.
No, of course. And then, of course, the promotional copies. This was 1982. So this was back when all the major labels were like stamping stuff on there saying that they reserve the right to take the record back from you. It's like they haven't given it to you; they've just loaned it to you.
Yeah.
So I had this thing that says, "Promotional or complimentary copy. Independent Project Records does not pretend to claim ownership after this record has left our possession."
Oh,
That was kind of my statement to the major labels.
And well, let me also say how that worked with the local disc jockeys. They love that kind of stuff. It's because the reason why they would do that is they were afraid of us because none of us had enough money to eat. They were afraid that we would sell stuff that they would send us. So when you collect things and when you find that hole in the CD or in the record jacket or whatever it might be, that's for promotional use. It's not to be for resale. And they used to have those warning labels. It's like that warning label on the mattress. Who enforces that stuff? You can have FBI agents coming in the middle of the night, taking all your records back.
Yeah.
So that's brilliantly done.
So every time we did a new edition of the record, I would change it somehow. And so this was the original second edition, which I was trying to save money by only printing 2 runs through the press instead of 3. But ultimately, I ended up damaging the printing plate here. So there's these weird things in the sky. And I sold maybe a couple hundred copies. And I was like, oh, this doesn't feel good. So I stopped selling them and I went back and reprinted it the same way I had done originally. And then we got to a 3rd edition, and I started switching the colors around. So this one has black type and red people. And then for the 4th edition, I thought, well, let's have some more fun with it. So I started doing all sorts of different colors schemes. And so there was like 6 or 7 different color schemes for the 4th edition. And actually, I don't have any samples right here, but for the 5th edition, the interesting thing about hand printing your own covers is that you can do whatever you want. And so just out of curiosity, sometimes I would be running one through the press and I'd think, well, what would it look like if I ran it through upside down? So I would end up with things that were supposed to be on the front would be on the back and vice versa. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. So actually for the entire 5th run of this, I ran one color through upside down. And so it's just like this weird abstract thing. But there's 800 copies of them out there, people have them in their collection.
It's collectible.
Bruce, what would you say inspired you, or how did the thought process start of how you put these things together? I think that learning how you tick is a very interesting topic to discuss, because would you say that you were at UCLA and you had maybe that one teacher who really connected with you? What was that moment?
So when the thing that first got me going on this track was probably a year before I graduated. There was a new instructor who came to UCLA, who's conceptual artist named Chris Burden, who was very well known for doing extreme performance art with using himself and his body as part of his art. And he came to teach a class called New Forms and Concepts, which was to expose all of us art students to conceptual art and performance art. And it just completely blew my mind in terms of what was possible. And so when I decided that I wanted to make a record as art, I took what was called an independent project course, which is where the student in your senior year, you get to design the course, design a project, and then you find an instructor to be your consultant on the project, and you do it. And so I asked Chris Burden if he would be my advisor for an independent project, which was making a record. And so that was my first record that I released on my label, Independent Project Records. It's called Project 197, which was a 7-inch record. And so this is a copy of the first pressing, which I did for this Independent Project course. And I thought, well, I need a record label name. What is this? This is an Independent Project record. So that became the label name. And so this one, it comes in a just your Xerox fold over cover. But what I did to try to make it art, oh, and of course the copy that I have here is weird. But anyway, I silk screened on, I had the records pressed with no paper labels on it, just the flat, clear plastic. And I silk screen printed on the records themselves in the package. This is, I should have looked at this more closely because this is this has both side A and side B silk screened on top of each other. But it gives you an idea that of what I was trying to do to make something that was more art and more special. And so it was because of Chris Burden and the fact that I was meeting some other musicians, people who were learning how to create their own experimental music in his class, that got me on this track to not only create music, but also start my record label. And then I ended up doing a couple of different releases. This is the second release on Independent Project Records, which was some music that was recorded in subterranean utility tunnels at UCLA. And this is a photo from one of the tunnels. They had a whole series of utility tunnels that connected the buildings underground. And I got permission to shoot an experimental film in these tunnels. And while I had access to the tunnels, a friend of mine and I brought guitars and amps down, and we recorded a bunch of pieces of music in there. And so this was my second release on the label. And then it was when we were starting to work on the first Savage Republic album, that was when I discovered the letterpress process through a class at the Women's Graphic Center in downtown Los Angeles. And so I learned letterpress and realized that they had a flatbed Vandercook, which had an 18 by 24 inch bed. And I looked at it and I thought, well, I could print my album covers on this because 12 inch by 24 inch sheet of paper will go through this nicely. So I took the class a second time. They taught me how to run that press, and I printed that first 1,000 album jackets during that class. So, and it just took off from there. I just like, wow, this is great. I'm doing more of this.
Well,
that's similar to your Savage Republic series, where you have it on a 545 book. I think you talk about it.
Yes, we have the. So that was this one here, Spencer. Yeah. So this was the first pressing. There's the second pressing. I started changing the colors a little bit, and the third pressing, the colors are even different. And again, part of the reason for that is that you're standing there at the press, hand feeding 1,000 of these through the press, and it takes several days to actually print 1,000 single sleeves. And it's like, okay, a few months later, do I want to go do the exact same thing again? No, let's make it interesting. Let's change things around. And so like the back cover, this is the first pressing again. The back cover is basically a lot of different little elements that we had that I printed, the carved linoleum blocks, little printing plates. I had started making stamps for the band at that point. And so we stuck a stamp on each one, and then the hand print was our other guitarist. He decided to hand print each one.
Wow, beautiful.
So when I started doing when I went to go do the second pressing, I thought, well, let's move things around. Things don't have to stay the same.
Right.
And so I retypeset some of the information, and then the third pressing, I moved things around even further. So it's just like, okay, let's play with this. Let's make it interesting. And part of that was just keep it interesting for myself.
Right.
So that's again, that's the artist in me. It's like, let's keep exploring. Let's keep pushing the boundaries a little bit. Let's see what we can do here.
Mm-hmm.
Judith expressed how you're organic and the type of materials that you use. I'm really fascinated by your use of colors. Specifically, I've been on this orange and black kick all of a
Yeah.
sudden. Uh, eh, Tell me like what the process is when you design, and we'll go through some of these other covers we haven't seen yet. But can you give us an idea like, this is a nice color for this project? By the way, do you listen to the music first before you continue to design?
It depends. One of the biggest projects that I did early on was, and I've got it here somewhere, I was hired by Jeff Aroff at Warner Brothers Records to design a promotional single sleeve for Scritti Politti, who started off as a UK band. They started off as kind of this post-punk band in the early 80s, but by, I think it was 1985 or so, they turned into this dance music group, kind of like Michael Jackson, and not my style of music, but it was a very popular release, and I got to design some stamps for them, and we incorporated that into a single sleeve. Oh, here it is. So this was the single sleeve that I designed for them, which included some stamps using this Scritti Politti logo that they had. And so this is the commercial edition of this single, which was taken from, I did a letterpress edition for promotional use of this single. And we also printed Scritti Politti stamps that they were able to use for promotion as well. So there are several thousand of these singles that are hand letterpress printed, and then they just photographed it or scanned it for the commercial edition. But no, I didn't listen to that music until afterwards, and I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I just wanted to do the best work that I could. And sometimes if the music is not up to, I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying not to.
Well, you know what, when it's
try not to be a music snob too much, but
well, I can
we
understand.
like what we like.
I have to go through and find things to play on the radio, and sometimes the album cover is the reason why I take a listen to the song.
Yeah.
So, there's that. And some of the songs are like, oh my gosh, I really like the album cover, but this song sucks. So, it's tricks of the trade. So take us through the process of how you, I guess, gravitate towards these type of colors that you use on a normal basis, and maybe show us more of these sleeves or record album covers.
Well, you know what? What's interesting about Bruce? He uses metallics a lot, right, Bruce?
Yeah, I noticed
that's
that too.
a very interesting area with metallic.
Well, that's something that I got into later on. I mean, early on, when I first started, I was doing it for my band. So the interesting thing about working with the brown chipboard is that it's a neutral tone. It's a mid-range tonality. So you can print the opaque white, you can print light on it, and you can print dark on it. And so it gives you much greater depth in your design, because the actual surface that you're printing on is sort of a neutral color. So that was something that I discovered early on, is that the opaque white was a wonderful thing to use on the chipboard, and then you can print on top of that and beside it and through it, and however you want to kind of design around that first color. It was later that I discovered the metallic inks, and then that gives a really, actually I should take it out of the bag. It gives a really nice reflective quality to the piece when you've got, you get it in the light. But the thing about the metallic inks is that if you're printing on an uncoated paper stock like the chipboard, you have to be printing on top of another layer of ink in order to really get that metallic sheen. And so that's what I've done on this one, is I printed the black first, and then that becomes a coating that the metallic ink sits on top of, and gives you much more of your metallic look on it. So this is the latest release on my record label, Tape Excavation.
Oh, really? Wow.
This was we did this. The gold version of this came with the deluxe edition of the Savage Impressions book that was published earlier this year by P22 Type Foundry. This is a project that we've been working on for the last 3 years, and finally was released just before everything shut down. So, but we also did a version of this. There's a black vinyl version of this, which has silver printing on the black instead of the gold, and that's still available. The gold version is sold out.
So Bruce,
But we
do you actually create the fonts that are some of these packages?
So this particular one, this was something that I really wanted to do, which was to create letters out of strips of linotype. So linotype, for those who don't know what it is basically it's a machine-made line of type. It's basically how newspapers and magazines used to be printed 100 or 80 years ago. And they would have these machines that you'd type out these lines of type. So what I always found was that if you took that strip of type and you flipped it upside down, that there was a really interesting pattern that the machine made. And so that's what this entire pattern background is, and what these letters in the word tape are made out of is strips of linotype flipped upside down, so that you basically using these abstract elements. I was going to try to do the whole tape excavation that way, and it was so difficult to actually get this to work and set it up on press that I gave up, and so I just used handset wood type for excavation, although the X is ornamental, ornaments that I kind of put together. So yeah, the idea with this particular design was I just really wanted to play with these strips of linotype and ornamental boxes and ornamental rule that I had accumulated. So it's just like, let's make abstract art out of these pieces of letterpress.
Hey, Bruce. Bruce, there's two Indian buildings and the 45 and the REM red green baby sleeve.
Yes, the REM baby sleeve. So this was from 1991. This was when I was first hired by the band REM to start designing and printing their Christmas fan club package. And they basically gave me free rein for a number of years to design whatever I wanted. And so this first year I just thought, well, I'm going to take a whole bunch of this letterpress ornamental rule and just block it all together and see what I can do with it.
It's great.
So it was a fun project, and I'm really proud of this
It's a
design.
beautiful piece.
And the interesting thing is that the green paper stock, this is called gypsum board. And when I was in downtown Los Angeles, most gypsum board is, let me see if I can find that. Okay, here's the Indian bingo one that you wanted to see. This is typical gypsum board. So it's kind of a creamy color on one side and it's brown chipboard on the other side. This is what they make drywall out of. And basically it's the reason it's called gypsum board is because when they make drywall, they take 2 sheets of this board and sandwich it with gypsum in the middle. And that's drywall. So I found the company that made this for the drywall manufacturers sold gypsum board. I mean, they said, yeah, we'll sell it to you. Just tell us what size you want and we'll sheet it out. You have to buy 2,000 pounds of it, though. That's the minimum quantity. And it turns out they had 3 different colors of it. They had this, they had green gypsum board, which was supposedly for bathrooms and kitchens. I think it had something like it was more, I don't know, water wouldn't get into it as much. And then there was another one. There was this deep brown gypsum board, which was just lovely color. And I did this half string single on.
I love that too.
And so I basically bought 2,000 pounds of each, and I had pallets of this stuff for years. I've since run out of it, and that company's no longer in business or no longer making gypsum board. But I mean, obviously, gypsum board is still being made. But I've thought about at some point I may try to find a new supplier of that I can get some more gypsum board for, because it's a wonderful stock to work with. Yeah, it takes to the letterpress really nicely. So,
did you ever work with multiple metallic colors, like multiple metallics?
Yes. Well, as a matter of fact, this particular half string, this is 3 different metallics. There's gold, silver, and copper, and then black.
Gorgeous. That's gorgeous.
So,
wow.
The thing is that, as you can kind of see, thing with the metallic inks is that unless you put a coating on top of them, they start toning. Like this is from fingerprints. So they start getting ugly after.
I got to tell you, Judith and I did this award-winning brochure for a photo. Remember, Judith? We did it for New York Gold. But we had to work with 5 metallic colors, Bruce.
Wow.
5, and the thing about it, we had to be on press. I think I ran down there 3 consecutive days on press, and it was like, what would happen is the metallics would bleed with each other. You had a problem. We managed to print it perfectly, but it was a headache, and it was a gorgeous project, by the way. 5 metallics, 5 metallics.
Wow. Well, the thing about letterpress is you can only print one color at a time. So if I'm doing multiple metallics, we print one color, let it dry overnight, and then come back the next day and we can print the next one. So we don't have problems with, inks bleeding into each other. Although that could be interesting,
It could be.
It could be.
What happened with the printer we work with, he wasn't worried about the money. He just wanted to do it for the concept, right, Bruce?
Right.
So that's cool,
Yeah, I can relate to that completely.
That brings us to, for me, I'm just wondering what kind of budgets you work with when you're doing this, because when Spencer and I design a package, we've always been constrained by our budgets, whereas you are designing for your own group. By the way, I didn't even know. You haven't spoken about what you do in your group. Are you a singer? What instrument do you play?
Well, most in Savage Republic, I played guitar half the time and bass half the time. I've since kind of stuck with the guitar, and I have to say, I mean, I've kind of come up with a fairly unique way of stringing and tuning my guitar, and I play completely intuitively. I don't read music. I couldn't, if I'm playing something, I couldn't tell you what notes I'm playing. It's entirely intuitive. Does this sound good? Do I like how this sounds? Yes, I'll play it. So I play an electric 12-string guitar that has 10 strings on it, and 6 of them are all strung and tuned to the same note.
Wow.
So there's, it's completely different than normal guitar playing, but it's something that I've developed over decades, and it's the way that I choose to speak with music,
It sounds like the way you approach your design.
Yeah, that's true. So Spencer, there's another project that had multiple metallic inks. This has got silver, gold. Actually, it's got silver, 2 golds, and copper. So this was a 12-inch package that I made for a 3-inch CD. And back when I just thought, okay, CD packaging is kind of too small and uninteresting. So this is some of my own solo ambient guitar recordings. And I burned a little 3-inch CD of music. There's 3 tracks on here, a little over 20 minutes. And then I created this
beautiful
cardboard flat sheet. It's just a single sheet of heavy duty chipboard that I printed on. And you can see the design sort of repeats. So what I would do is I'd print it one way and then I'd flip it and print it again and then flip it again and kind of change the colors.
Beautiful.
And then the CD just kind of fits on there in the middle. And so that was a fun project.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I want to get me a close-up, Patrick. So Judith and I, to give you an idea, this is what we did in special packaging. And Bruce, you could see we work with like a board and a die cut and the brochure in the back you can't see, but that's 5 metallics plus PMS black. But we worked a lot special packaging, right, Judith? We did. Dennis Asienzo worked with us, and this was a gorgeous project. But the board was the thing on the cover, and the die cut into it, and then you open it up. But we worked on special. A part of what you're doing in your life, we worked on something like that.
Yeah.
We are almost running out of time. We got about 4 minutes to go. Why don't you show us your book?
Yeah.
Of course. Savage Impressions. This is the book that was just published earlier this year by P22. They're a digital type foundry, but they've also gotten into a lot of letterpress projects. Richard Kegler is the designer and lead owner of P22. And he approached me a little over 3 years ago saying, Bruce, I don't think there's a book of your work out there. There should be a book of your work. And so he ended up running a Kickstarter 2.5, 3 years ago. And we managed to get the money together to get started on the book. It ballooned way out of proportion, went from 150 pages to 240 pages. And so 1,000 copies of the book were produced, and it's a beautiful piece. I'm honored that he wanted to create this and take a chance on it and make it happen.
Yeah, how does one be able to buy the book? Is there a outlet to buy it?
There are 2 places. There are 2 places you can order it online. Partly because of the fact that the costs went way out of control. He's not wholesaling it. It's not available on Amazon. I guess unless somebody wants to, sell their copy on Amazon, they could. But the P22 website, p22.com, you can go and he is selling copies of the book. He still has a couple of copies of the deluxe edition, which comes with the tape excavation album, extra letterpress printed inserts, that stamp sheet I showed earlier, and a letterpress printed wraparound. So there's still a few copies of that available. The regular edition of the book, I believe there's still several hundred copies available. We also have a website for our gallery at www.projectroom.net. And we are also selling copies of the book. We don't have any of the deluxe edition available, but the actual book and the tape excavation, plus a number of other things that I've printed over the years. Different printed things, like for instance, this was for a CD package that I did for Red Temple Spirits, and we made some just print editions that are signed and numbered. Other things like the Desolation Center film that a friend of mine did. This is a little printed art card that we've produced. So there's a lot of that kind of printed ephemera available on our projectroom.net website, along with the book as well.
That's really fantastic. There's going to be that one Weisenheimer will go, is your book available on Kindle yet? I mean, all right. Yeah. Come on, man. Well, thanks a lot, Bruce. We do really
Thank you, Zach.
We're going to have to do this again. We'll have to cover some of your music, maybe get into some more of your great art and talk about it more, because there's so much more to go. So I would say that
anytime
we're going to have to create a series out of this one. Well, thank you, Spencer Drate, Judith Salavetz, and Bruce, along with Patrick Bamburak. It's been another episode of Designing for Music, which we thoroughly enjoyed this time. You can always follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/BigFatAmerican or New HD USA. I'm on Twitter at New HD Radio if anybody is interested in doing that. Download the New HD Radio app. It's really cool. And coming to Los Angeles in the next few weeks. New HD, LA. Yeah.
Yay.
We're expanding.
And I gotta put a plug in for us, Zach. The 10 interview series will be on YouTube. Patrick's putting together for us also, and that has interviews with many of the great designers and album covers, 45s, and special CD packaging, and of course Bruce Licher's pieces are in it. So I just want to end with that at least.
They are.
No, it's good. If you go to YouTube and search, I guess, the Zach Martin Show, but what we'll have to do is create a Designing for Music channel.
Yeah.
And Patrick is going, great. I guess I'll be doing that. And yes, you will.